All right, well, good evening. Thank you very much for joining us tonight with this setting up your FSA ID. What we're going to do is go through the FSA ID, setting it up step by step, as it says. And if you have questions as we're going along through this, we're going to use the chat box for that. So please utilize the chat box. If you are watching Facebook Live right now here on November the 1st, then you can use the comment section to answer any question or ask any questions that you have. And I'm going to have a couple of screens here that I'm going to try to monitor both. But again, this was a webinar where we had 147 that are registered. As of yesterday, we had 29, so I know a lot of you have registered last minute and really excited to be able to share this information with you. My name is Eric Danielson with the Iowa College Access Network. I'm Vice President of Programs at ICANN. I've been with them over 25 years. And quite honestly, for you senior families, what is coming up is a FAFSA form for the 24-25 school year that has the biggest changes in the last 40 years that we've actually seen. What I'm talking about tonight is not necessarily that, but the FSA ID is going to be a major component of that. Please ask questions in the chat. I see that there's one question and answer there. Actually, don't put the questions in there. Please put them in the chat box, and we'll go ahead and get started with the program. I did want to mention that ICANN Advising Services, there are different things that we can do to help you out when the time comes. If you want help in filling out the financial aid form, you can go online to schedule. This is something actually for 24-25, since we do not know yet when the exact date it starts. Typically, a FAFSA new season will start on October the 1st. That is not the case this year, as many of you know. We are still waiting for when that is going to take place. And I'm sorry, I'm just looking to make sure that my monitor is on. The Facebook Live is working right now, so I was checking my other monitor. But we do not know yet in December when that is going to start, the actual FAFSA form. Chances are it's going to be later in December than it will be in the beginning. So for many of you, we may not be able to help you until starting in January. And we'll be beginning to schedule January appointments the week of November 13th. So if you're looking at scheduling with us, the week of November 13th is when we'll begin scheduling for January, because the FAFSA form has to be ready by the end of the calendar year. All right, what I'm going to begin, though, in talking with you about the FSA ID. First of all, wanted to get into what the FSA ID is. This stands for Federal Student Aid Identification. This is going to be what you're going to use to electronically sign the FAFSA form, but there are also other functions for it too. For students to do master promissory notes and entrance counseling, anything really that's at the studentaid.gov website, everything now is located there on that Federal Student Aid website. And what the FSA ID is going to be, and using it as electronic signature, is a username and password to gain access to that and sign and do everything. So that's what an FSA ID is, and I know that was one of the questions on the Q&A. But again, if you have questions as we're going along, please put those in the chat, and I'll try to answer them as I'm going through this step-by-step process with you. Now, this year, when we say everyone will now need a verified FSA ID to gain access and sign the FAFSA form electronically, it's really considered the first step into completing the FAFSA form. And getting into that a little bit more, when we say everyone needs it, this may mean now multiple parents may need an FSA ID. In the past, we have said that the parents are only going to need, one parent would need it. In a one-parent household, only one would need it. But now in a two-parent household, there is the possibility, if both those parents that are on the FAFSA form, if they do not file a joint return, then each of them are going to need to complete their section of the FAFSA form separately and get an FSA ID to be able to sign and what we call give consent to have their 22 taxes brought in. So just to be safe, I think it would be good in a two-parent household to have both parents also go and get their FSA ID. Now, there is going to be a process for creating an FSA ID for individuals that do not have Social Security numbers and be able to access that as well. I will talk about that in just a second. But the FSA ID, not only will you need to create them, which is something we've always had to do, the student and at least one parent. Now it might be both parents. So that's why, again, we're saying everyone. But the FSA ID is now going to need to be verified and confirmed prior to accessing the FAFSA form, which wasn't something that was done in the past. It typically will take 3 to 7 days for confirmation. And so just to be safe, we would encourage you to do it right now, whenever you're seeing this, even if you're watching this FSA ID webinar on demand. Do the FSA ID right now so that you're ready for whenever the FAFSA form does come out in December and be able to ready. Now, one question that did come up was, if you've already got an FSA ID from 20 years ago, do we need to get a new one? Actually, FSA IDs, these FSA IDs have only been around since 2014. So 20 years ago, you would need to get a new one. It must have been something else. I know there were PIN numbers and other things in the past that had been utilized, but these actual FSA IDs have only been around since May of 2014. So you would need to go in and get another one. If you go in through the step-by-step that we're going to be talking about, and after the first page that we go through with you, if you already do have one that was created in the last 9 years, because I've had sometimes parents who have forgotten that they do have one already from a previous student or when they went to college in the last 9 years, then it will tell you that you've already got one in your name. But if one was just created 20 years ago, that was something else. It wasn't this, and you will need to get a new one. Good question. Thank you for bringing that up. And again, keep those questions coming. Now, FSA IDs have also started having a multi-factor authentication requirement too. So you are going to need to put down an email, which is required now. It usually used to be that you've only needed to have a cell phone or an email. Now an email is going to be required, but a cell phone, and then there is an authentication app that can be used and created. Students and parents or spouses will need to be in contact if they're trying to help to complete information for the other roles. I just want to put out with the FAFSA form this upcoming year, it's not going to be just one complete form going all the way through. They're actually breaking it up into segments forever who they call contributors are, the student contributor and the parent or parents, if a two-parent household might be contributing. So you might need to do 1, 2, or even 3 sections, you could say, all to get completed by each contributor before the FAFSA form is totally completed. Again, this is another reason we feel that the FSA ID and getting this ahead of time, besides even what you see on the screen, is going to be more important than ever. Now, a question comes up. If you are divorced, then I understand that both parents don't need to register, if that is correct. Actually, that would be correct. In the situation, if the parents are divorced or separated, the parent that is going to be the student contributor on the 24-25 FAFSA form will be the parent that the student received the most financial support in the last 12 months from whenever you fill out that form. So whether it is here in December, January, February, you look at the last 12 months. And if that parent would be the father and the father is not remarried, then only the father will need to get an FSA ID. I do want to mention, though, that if a father is going to, if the father is remarried as of the day we're filling out the form, then it's going to be father and the step parent information that's going to need to go on the FAFSA. And if that step parent and father did not file joint taxes in 22, then the step parent will need to get an FSA ID as well to be able to complete their section. Now, one question I got on Facebook was, are paper applications acceptable? And that is still something that is available. We really want to encourage you to do it online. You're less likely to make errors and mistakes, and it's quicker to process. But paper applications are something that are still going to be available as of right now for you to do if you want it. But I know at ICANN, we want to encourage you to try to do it online and get these FSA IDs to do it, because over 99% of the families do complete the form in this way. Something else I wanted to mention with the parents and legal guardians without Social Security numbers, there is going to be a way that they can apply. The contributors will have their FSA ID verified with TransUnion Credit Bureau. If they don't have documentation to be able to do that, then they'll be able to upload documents into the FSA ID website here, studentaid.gov, to verify identity. But that is not available as of yet. And the manual process of signing a signature page after you complete the rest of the form online is being retired. That is not going to be available for the 24-25 form. So even though paper copies will be available, the total paper copies to be able to mail in and to send in and sign will be available, there is still going to be there will not be a signature page in this way when doing it online. At FSA IDs will need to be created. Now here's a screenshot of what it's probably going to look like for the account, where you put down, I don't have a social security number, but that is still to be determined on how everything is going to look and go on what the process and when it's going to be. From what we've heard, it probably won't be until December. There is a webinar tomorrow, November 2nd, that going to be watching to learn a little bit more about this, but that process is not up and running. Right now, the only FSA IDs that can be done here online are for those that do have social security numbers, but that again should change by December. Now, I did have a question on Facebook. How do we know our FSA ID is verified? You will get an email stating that it's been verified. And if you also keep logging in with the FSA ID to studentaid.gov, eventually it will give you that verification status. But you should be notified by email or text, whichever way that you prefer. If you do this option that I'll show you in just a second, when we get to that part, that they will let you know when it is verified. And if you've attempted to get an FSA ID a few weeks ago, should you have gotten an email? If you selected that as an option to get communication. If you didn't, then you may not get the email. But what I would do is I would try to log back into studentaid.gov with the ID that you created, and then see if it has been verified. It should tell you that within the home page that you have. Great question on there. On Facebook. Keep those coming as well. Another question: if parents are divorced and both remarried and contribute 50% to the student in the past 12 months, which parent's information should be used for completing the FAFSA? Another great question. If it is a 50-50 split, the next thing that we would always ask is it truly 50-50? One tiebreaker on that could be, whose insurance are they on as parents? Maybe that's a tiebreaker, that one gives a little more financial support than the other, and then we would choose that parent. But if it is a truly 50-50 split, even counting all of that, then the parent that you are to use is the one that has the most income. And as we are supposed to go with the one then that has the most income from there and choosing that. So, and if that parent is remarried, then we would use that step parent information as well on the form. But that is the tiebreaker to utilize if it is a truly 50-50 split in that last 12 months, even counting what parents' insurance they were on as well. Do want to point out that each person is going to have a unique FSA ID. If your parents need to create, they must have their own username and email address. That is now required. Sometimes we've had some parents that don't have an email address. An email would need to be created one for them to get an FSA ID if they don't. And then mobile phone number, that is not a requirement like the email is, but you cannot use the same mobile phone number or email address for multiple FSA IDs. Only each email and mobile phone can only be tied to one FSA ID. Now, Social Security number, email address, again, with only one FSA ID. So if you do share that, again, you're going to have to use another one to create an FSA ID on there. And really, sometimes parents will share an email address. Only one parent could use that one email address. Another one must be used. And with these email addresses, I should point out that we would like you to keep it to generic emails that you're always going to have, Gmail accounts, Ymail, whatever you utilize. Not using a school email account, sometimes not even a work email would be good, just in case if something would change and then you don't have access to that email anymore. Now, how do you create an FSA ID and a username and password? Let's go through the process a little bit step by step here. I do believe, though, that there is one other question. Does a stay-at-home mom still need to create an FSA ID, or just the parent that is working? Just in case, now, if with this question, if that mom is married and they still file a joint return, then you would need to you wouldn't need to create an FSA ID. The other parent could do that. Only one parent would need it on there. So if you're filing a joint return, which I'm assuming that would be the case within this situation, then only one parent would need it. Now, it could still be the stay-at-home mom that gets the FSA ID. Since they're on the joint return, just one of those parents, either one, could get it. So it wouldn't have to be the parent, just the parent that is working. But there are some one-parent households that they do not file taxes. You still need to get an FSA ID in that situation. They will ask you to give consent to have the taxes brought over. What will happen is it'll show the FAFSA form when you do give consent that you don't have anything on file, but an FSA ID still must be received in that case if it's a one-parent household, even if you don't file taxes and aren't working. Now, where we get started at is going to studentaid.gov. When we come to studentaid.gov, we're going to hit the create account button. If it's not if it doesn't look like this right in the middle, there might be other graphics that are in there right now. You see with my cursor up here, it would be create an account. You would click on that. And the next slide then that you're going to see is a page where basically gives you what you can use the account for, which is always good to take a look at. And some of those things I had mentioned, like a master promissory note, and what you're going to need for the account, social security number, own mobile phone, and an email address on there, not or, but you will definitely need an email address. That is mandatory now. And then click, just click get started. The first thing that we're going to get into is providing personal identification information. We want you to make sure your social security number, date of birth, and name match exactly what is on your social security card. So double check, even triple check that. For parents, a lot of times you've probably memorized your social security number, but for high school seniors, this is typically one of the first times they start to use it, and they'll continue to use it as they go along through life. So for high school seniors, whether you want to or not, I know that you're going to eventually over this next year, because a lot of areas are going to be asking for this, and forms and stuff that you're going to utilize are going to ask for your social security number. You're probably going to memorize it, but don't just rely on that. Double check with that social security card first, because this is what they do with the Social Security Administration to match up. Now, going back to an earlier question, if you would have an FSA ID already created, but you're not sure, once you get by this part and then click continue, if you've already got one in your name with your social security number, then it will let you know that right away here in the beginning. If it allows you to move on to the next page and get here creating an account, then you do not have one in your name. You would not have one in your name. Now, this next part, and you can see at the top, it kind of toggles along with you on what steps we are. We're already on step 2. These typically don't take too long to be able to do, 10, 15 minutes at the most to be able to create. What you are going to need to do is a unique username that nobody else has used, and it will let you know, like this one, Jane Doe, that username at this time was available. I doubt you can do Jane Doe now by getting on the FAFSA form. But if there's a username that is not available, John Smith, for example, I'm sure John Smith has already been taken. You would probably need to add something on to that. Eventually, it will let you know when a username is available that you can use. Then an email address. And I do like how it says up here, you'll continue to have access after you leave school. So again, they like to especially point that out to the students. Don't use a high school email address that you won't have once you graduate. Use an email address, a generic one that you're always going to have access to. You'll confirm the email and then set up a password. And that password can be 8 to 30 characters and must have an uppercase, lowercase, and a number in it. So that is what you'll do with creating the password there. Then confirm that password again and hit continue. Step number 3, we get into providing contact information, address on there. For students, what I would use would be your general, your permanent mailing address, just put that down. And then also mobile phone number will be included on there as well. They do want to give you give that you can use that for account recovery, just to give consent for that. And so once you've entered in the mobile phone number, permanent address, then you'll hit continue from there. And now we're getting into step number 4, which is the selecting communication preferences. Now you must select whether to receive required communications by email or postal mail. Email is what is usually recommended, but postal mail is what is something you can still use if that's what you would rather do. So this required communication, federal student aid services will need for required documents related to student aid, such as student loan disclosures and interest statements. So that is something that is required on there. Now, informational communications, you can opt in to receive those. And with the informational ones, this will help sometimes send out information about programs you could be eligible for, grant programs, loan forgiveness, income plans, and more. So that is optimal, although I would encourage you to opt in either by email or text message, whichever way you prefer. Then your preferred language is listed down below, and once you click on that, we can hit continue and move on to step number 5 within creating this. Step number 5 is the area where we're going to create 4 challenge questions. This is one way where you can unlock your account and retrieve a username or the password. Answers are not going to be case sensitive on here, and it will give you a list of questions. You see some examples, if you can see my screen there right now, like name of elementary school, name of first teacher, mother's maiden name, city where your parents met, but there are other ones that are going to be on there as well. What I would encourage you to do when creating challenge questions, make sure you're creating questions where you absolutely know what the answer is, and if at all possible, create challenge questions with only one-word answers too. I think that a lot of times is easier to be able to answer the one-word ones, and then you don't have to worry about whether you had a space or not between some of them, between some of the answers that you had. So these, quite honestly, aren't the best way to be able to retrieve at least a password, and I'll tell you that a little bit later on why, but it is still one way. So I would suggest writing down those challenge questions and what answers that you put down. But again, try to pick ones that you're going to know no matter when you need to answer them, that they won't change. Now we're getting into step number 6, which is review the information and agree to terms. Review that personal information, the account information, contact, communication preferences. And if there is something you want to edit, you can see the edit buttons right there that would allow you to be able to do that. But if everything is good, then we're going to hit next from there. And now we're getting to step 7, the very last step, where we're going to enable the 2-step verification. The first thing that you're going to do is, with the cell number and email address that you listed, you're going to click on verify, and clicking on the verify for the cell phone at first, it's going to send a 6-digit code to your cell phone. When you receive that code, which usually with the text messages verification, they go fairly quickly, you're going to enter in that 6-digit code and hit continue. And what you should get is it says that it's verified now on the screen. The next thing we're going to do is hit verify for the email verification, the verify button. You're going to get a 6-digit code that's going to be texted to you to the email address that you listed down on there. Now, sometimes the emails take a little bit longer. I know in our offices, it seems to take a minute or two before the emails will get there compared to the cell phone numbers. So keep refreshing and do continue to wait and see until that finally comes to you. Once it does, enter in that 6-digit code, we hit continue, and now the email is verified as well. Now you could hit continue on from there, but you do see down below there that there's a use an authenticator app. This is not something you have to do, but if you're a type of person that wants a little bit extra security when you're doing the 2-step verification, you can set up an authenticator app by clicking on that on this button here. If you do that, what's going to come up, it's going to tell you to download the authenticator app from your mobile app store. And then for step number 2, you can either copy that long authenticator code there, or scan the QR code into the app and hit continue, which is something that is easier to do. Clicking on that and hitting continue, Then they're going to send a 6-digit code to your authenticator app on your phone. You enter in that code, hit finish, and now you've got that verified as well if you want to create it. I can't say that I always create those with families if they've come into our offices to do. And I still like when we have the two-step verification, when we log into the account and have the two-step verification, my favorite is still just the text message, because that seems to be quicker and easier, and can just be text to them and enter in, and then we can get started with their part of the FAFSA form from there. But if you want to do the authenticator app, we definitely wanted to let you know that that is something available. Now, when we hit continue, the next thing, the very last thing that you're going to need to do is to store this backup code. This backup code, they just started doing this in July of 2022. The backup code is going to be this code example like you see down there, that typically people will take pictures of or write them down or do both of those, and making sure that they store them in a safe place, because the backup code is a special code that lets you access your account in the event you cannot use any other two-step verification method. So kind of it'll be the last line of defense to try to get the code get back up and going before you have to actually call federal student aid and see if you can get it going again. Once you do take the picture, write it down, I would suggest both. Then you click on, I have stored this backup code somewhere safe, hit continue, and now you're ready to be able to log in and to use and to, I would say, use the FSA ID if it was right now, but now it's going to need to be verified first before jumping into the form, and that should again take 3 to 7 days. Before I move on there, I wanted to check, I've got a question. Someone says they've got a daughter who's already in college that will need to reapply for financial aid again. Will she use her current FSA ID in December? Yes. Yes. If a student already has one, as a parent, if you already have one, you do not need to create a new one. But if you do have a high school senior this year right now that needs to create them, have them do that right now and getting ready. But if they've already have one, what I would just suggest to do is to make sure they know the username and password, that it is working. And if it's not, and you need to reset the password, then I'm going to show you in just a second on how to do that as well. If there is a way to see if I have one in my account, is there a way to see if I have one in my account? An FSA ID already? Actually, if you just go, and I'm assuming that meant an FSA ID, if you have one into your account, already have one, if you create an account and then enter in your information at first, it will let you know whether or not that there's one already tied to you. It won't let you move on from there. So I believe that was the question that you were asking, but if not, let me know. You already have an account, so there's a way to see I have one already in my account. You already have an account. I'm sorry, can you explain that when you say already see one? I'm just not 100% sure what that means. So let me know, clarify that a little bit on the question. And there is another question here I'm going to get to. I assume that when you complete the 2425, it needs to be completed under my child's credentials. Dad, won't log in and complete under my login credentials. Actually, what's going to take place is to start the form, we'd like to see students start theirs with their FSA ID. They log in at first. And then at the very end, they're going to put down the parent or parent contributors that need to do the parent section for them. When they log in the parent or parent contributors, including the social security number, date of birth, the name of the parent, and an email address, when they list that and then hit submit to complete their section of their FAFSA, as a parent, you're going to get an email stating you need to complete now your part for the student. And then you're going to log in with your FSA ID, be two-step verified, and there will be an activity page that'll state you need to complete the parent section for this student of the FAFSA form. You'll click on activity, get into your section, and do your part of it. If there is a third contributor, like another parent, because you didn't do a joint return, they're also going to get an email and do their section of it as well. So in other words, the FAFSA, instead of one part, is going to be 2 for a dependent student, and maybe even 3 if there are 2 parent contributors that filed separate taxes. you're going to need to have 3 different parts completed and all submitted in before the total student FAFSA form is actually completed for the parent. I will tell you that I know that that sounds a little confusing, and I'm trying to explain it. One thing that we are going to do is do FAFSA step-by-step webinars. The first one starting on Wednesday, December 20th, the second on January 17th. We are going to do step-by-step webinars showing that more once the FAFSA is up and running. Even if it's not by December 20th, we think we're going to by then have some good screenshots to be able to show you on what it is going to look like. But that's how it's going to be. So instead of one complete form, it's really different sections that need to be completed, and all those sections completed by each contributor will need to be done before the total form is completed. Another question, just so I'm understanding, parents that file taxes jointly, only one of the parents need to have an FSA ID. That is correct. We've still been told only one will need it if there are 2 contributors, but they file joint tax parent contributors. If you file joint taxes, you should only need one FSA ID. I can log in on student aid and see my loans. Is there somewhere I can see if I have an FSA ID? Oh, your account, if you can log in, that is your FSA ID. What you're logging in with, you already have that. This is the FSA ID. When you log into studentaid.gov and see your loans, what you're logging in with is your FSA ID, so you would not create a new one. I'm sorry, you won't need to create another one then when you can do that already. Clarify, my husband and I are planning on taking out loans for our child for college. Would my son still need to get an FSA ID, although he has not taken out any student loans? Yes, I would still suggest him doing it and doing the FAFSA form. We want to encourage every family to fill out the FAFSA form just because this is the starting process, not only for federal aid and taking out federal loans, which you don't have to, but that would be something that can be done, but not only federal aid, but state aid and sometimes the institutional aid too. So I would encourage you, son, get an FSA ID, complete a FAFSA form for him just to see what the college can provide. If my child file taxes, is there anything he needs to do? Really, just get an FSA ID, and there will be a part, what this FSA ID is going to allow to do, not only to complete the form, but also to give consent to have taxes directly brought over, which I think for many families, I can't say all, but many families, it will allow to be able to do. And so if child filed taxes in 22, I would get those just in case if for some reason you manually need to put them in. But I think for most students, they're going to be able to what's called hit a consent button this year within their section of the FAFSA that they're filling out. And that information is going to be brought over directly from the IRS. More and more people are going to be able to utilize that. And quite honestly, this what we call direct data exchange is why the FAFSA, I believe, is not up and running yet. They're still trying to make sure and work out all the kinks. And they needed a little extra time to make sure it would work here. So that's why we're waiting until December to do it. All right, great. I think I've answered all the questions so far. If there's any that I haven't or ones that come up later, please again put those in the chat and I'll continue to answer those questions. These are great to be able to go over and some good reminders for me on things I wanted to talk about anyway. Now let me show you about logging in to the student aid account. When you log in, you're going to log in and put in the username and the password and then click log in. What's going to come up is either the authenticator app if you did set that up, or the text or email, and you only have to send one to have the code sent. Actually, with the authenticator app, I believe it's from that app where you'd say send a code, and then you would just enter it into here at that time. But whichever way that you choose, entering in the code for the authenticator app, email or text, it's only one. Once you do that and hit submit, then you're going to be able to get in, hit accept, and eventually be able to start the FAFSA form or look at your loans, the home page, anything that you can get done in that federal student aid, studentaid.gov website. Now, a question was, and this might be for some of you that already have FSA IDs. What if you forget your FSA ID username and password? Whether you know you have one right now or you start to create one and it says you've already have one. and you don't know that username and password. Well, what you would do is when you at the login part, you can put forget my username or forget my password, whichever one that you want to do. If you select forgot my username, then what will happen with the username is they can either text you a code to your mobile phone number, email a secure code, or have you answer challenge questions. Now, they are going to ask you, which I didn't show it in the screen, to enter in name, social security number, and date of birth to get that username as well to see if you have one. And then these retrieve functions will come up whichever way that you want to do it. As a reminder on the screen before, though, if you forgot a username, you could give a try to the email or the mobile phone number instead that you think might have been used to create the ID. When you verify a mobile phone or a email address, that then can be used for the username instead of the username you created. Now, as far as forgetting the password, when you select forgot password, you're going to be able to reset that after they send you a 6-digit code, text, or an email. What they'll do is they'll ask for your username and then date of birth, hit continue. And then if that goes through where that matches, then you can have that text, email, or answer challenge questions. The one thing that we want to mention when you're resetting a password, if you reset a password using challenge questions, for security purposes still, there's a 30-minute delay before you can log into an account. So I know if somebody forgets their password when they're in our office, we try, if at all possible, so that there's not that 30-minute delay to either use a text or an email. And that's the way I would encourage you to do it and not utilize the challenge questions if you have that text or email still at your disposal. That's the best way in resetting a password to do it. Answering challenge questions for the username does not lock you out for 30 minutes, but it does when you reset the password. You would go ahead then, when it allows you to go, when they do verify the 6-digit code that's sent to you by email or your cell phone, enter in a new password. It must be a password that you've not used in the last 10 passwords with the FSA ID. You can also not include your name, date of birth, or social security number within that password, but it will still need to be the uppercase, lowercase, and number, more than 8 characters to be able to create that new password. If it is a password that you have used in the last 10 times using it, it'll let you know that and make you reset it again before you can hit finish and move on. Those, again, resetting those passwords, for those of you that think you have FSA IDs already, I would make sure that they do work, and if not, then get those passwords reset and be ready when it comes time in December or January to fill out the financial aid form. I want to let you know I'm going to be ending the webinar here soon, so any last minute questions, please put those in the chat or put it in the Facebook Live comment section with any questions again remaining. But if you would need any help or more information, you can go to our website at icansucceed.org. We also have e-alerts that we send out, especially senior alerts that will, for one example, when that FAFSA form date is set, we will shout to the high heavens, including on our e-alerts, when that date is going to be. And you can sign up for those at icansucceed.org. On our front page, there is a place to sign up for the e-alerts there. Another great resource, if you haven't utilized it yet, an email service that is actually for parents for students in grades 8 through 12th grade, is SP3, the Student Planning Pointers for Parents. This email is designed to help you as you're going through this with timely information based on the grade and the time of year. You would receive 2 emails per month on relevant topics, depending on what grade level you sign up for. And as parents, you can sign up for multiple grade levels, actually. Not only is it good information and to keep you on track, but they actually will give out 40 $250 deposits each quarter into 529 plans. So you could earn a little bit money as well, besides having some great information. Where you would go to register for these SP3 Student Planning for Pointers for Parents is sp3.org, www.sp3.org. Before we go over the next steps, I think there was a couple of other questions that I wanted to get into. And so let me double check that. Can you add the web page to start the process for the FSA ID? Yes, let me go, studentaid.gov. I just put that in there. Whoops, let me get it to everyone. I think I just sent it to the host. Studentaid.gov, studentaid.gov. And I guess I do have it on my screen right now as too, if I didn't have the chat box on my screen right in front of me. But studentaid.gov is where you would go to create these FSA IDs. Another question, my husband and I would only need one FSA ID between the two of us since we filed taxes jointly, and our son would need an FSA ID, right? That is correct. Student is always going to need one and need one on their own. But in a two-parent household, if you file joint taxes, only one of you would need the FSA ID. If in a two-parent household, two-parent contributors, you file taxes separately, then both of you would need it. And the two big examples we see is sometimes the legal parents, biological legal parents, are unmarried but live together. They wouldn't file joint returns, but we still need both of those parents on the FAFSA form. Both of them would need to get FSA IDs. A parent in a divorced or separated situation, or even a widowed situation, but just got remarried, and now they're filling out the FAFSA form, we would need that step parent to get the FSA ID too, and include their information on the FAFSA form, because we do have to include a step parent's information on the form if a widowed parent just getting remarried, or a parent that is divorced or separated just got remarried, even if they weren't remarried during the tax year that's being asked about, which on the 24-25 form will be the 22 tax year. That will be on there. We would still need both of them. But in your question, if husband and you would only need one FSA ID since you filed jointly, and your son would need one as well. So two of you would need to go to studentaid.gov and create that. If you complete the 23-24 form now, does any of that information carry forward to 24-25? I do not believe it's going to now. In the past, some of that would, but now I'm not sure that information is going to carry over this first year. That's honestly a question that we're not 100% sure about, and the way things that are done and splitting up, I don't believe that it's going to be the case. So I wouldn't worry about completing a 23-24 form unless the student is going to school at some time in the fall of 23 here now, or the spring and summer of 24. That's what that form is for. But I don't believe a lot of it will carry over that we know about, but we're not 100% sure. And have asked that question, not 100% sure yet how much, if any, would if you've already done a 23-24 form. A good question. I just wouldn't, again, I wouldn't worry about doing that if you have a high school senior and filling it out next year. I wouldn't do a 23-24 form. I would just wait till 24-25 is available. Right. Any other questions at all? Please put those in. What I've got on here just for last steps and wrapping up, one thing that I didn't put or hadn't talked about much, but we like to put down, if there's any institutional or private scholarships, start applying for those. High school seniors right now, we hope you've already have been looking and continue to do for private scholarships, but check with the colleges as well. Sometimes just doing the FAFSA form and what they already know from your grades and test scores, you could qualify for some institutional aid, but there can be other scholarships available at the college or university that needs a separate application. If that's the case, make sure that you're getting those on time and when the deadlines are. Get your FSA ID at studentaid.gov right now, and then file that FAFSA also at studentaid.gov whenever it starts in December. Again, I'm amazed we still don't know that starting date, but that's still the case as of here on November 1 when we're recording this webinar. We do not know the exact date, and chances are I think it's going to be closer to over Christmas break that it'll be beginning of the month. So for many of you, it may be over that Christmas break or even after the new year when you start to fill out that form. But please do it before the school's priority date. And this year with the FAFSA starting later, many colleges have later priority dates, but there are some that have February 1 priority dates. The three Regent schools, Iowa, Iowa State, and UNI being examples, they have February 1 priority dates for new students getting in their FAFSA form for next year. make sure that you're getting those done in January and submitted. And since you have to have the FSA IDs done ahead of time before you can start the form, that's why we're having this webinar, so that you're getting it done now and getting it ready and beating those schools' priority dates. One question that was asked, how will we know when the FAFSA is available to complete? I tell you what, if you sign up for our e-alerts, and we are also going to be putting it on our website when it happens, so that's some places to check. We are also going to get out the information to all school counselors throughout the state of Iowa. When we hear about it, that will be a message that we get out to them so that they know, and encourage them to get it out to high school senior families. But just keep checking back in with us on there. We will have it on front page of our website when we finally hear when that exact date is. You can sign up for an ICANN appointment if you want the help, but again, we are not starting to do any FAFSA appointments yet until the week of November 13th. If the FAFSA would come out earlier in December than we think, before Christmas break, then we will have some availability at that time. But really, we know it's got to be done by the end of December. So the week of November 13th is when we're going to start taking appointments for January and have our January calendars open. So that's when I would check back in with us or go online at icansucceed.org. You see the website down below on this slide, as well as our number. You can go to our website to set those appointments up, but we're not going to have them up and running yet for January appointments until the week of November 13th. Stay on top of the process, and just like many of you were doing tonight, ask if you need the help. Ask if you have questions. I think there are still questions for us at ICANN who've even been around a long time are going to have in going through this process the first time. And I haven't mentioned this at all, but those of you that are high school senior families, I'm in the same boat with you. I've got a high school senior daughter, and the first day that form comes out, I've said she's going to be my guinea pig. I'm going to fill that out and see how it goes, and learn a little bit about the nuances to be able to help the rest of you in completing the form. But just like you, I'm waiting to see on how it's going to look, and can't wait to find out the exact date and go through the process. And hopefully, when it does come out, that it's going to work smoothly. Probably will be some glitches with any changes that as we go along, but just hoping that it will go as smoothly as possible for you when the time comes to fill this form out. I am double checking to see if there are any other questions, any last minute questions now. Not seeing any within the chat that is on there. And so I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar then. Oh, what happens if there is an error in the FAFSA form? If there's an error in the FAFSA form, I guess usually if something doesn't agree within it or moving along, it will let you know that. If there were some mistakes made or things that you put in that you know would be an error later after it's processed, corrections will be able to be logged back in and be able to made. But typically you're not able to make those corrections until the FAFSA is processed. And the FAFSA will be processed when all the contributors that are on the form have completed their sections. Once all those are in, then it usually takes about a week for the FAFSA form to be processed as well. And you will get results back called a FAFSA submission summary that you can double check information and look over to make sure everything was all right. If there were any errors, you can make corrections at that time. All right. Well, thank you. And thank you everyone for attending. This was, whether you're watching it live here on November 1st or watching our recording on Facebook or the webinar itself we have on our YouTube page. Thank you for taking the time to do this. You've got our number and website down below there. Do not hesitate to contact us if any questions come along the way. Thanks again. Good luck with this process, and hope to see many of you at some time and do appointments for you if you need the help when that form is finally out sometime in December, getting into January. Thank you very much, and have a great rest of your evening.